Nước mô pha là rau đó thì công nè. Mà sáng thì nó không bán mà không biết có đứa mô pha sáng trừ có mùi ha. Cười ghê trời.
Không rưỡi chị.
Mà đang chết đó. Nữa hả? Bữa nay toàn trẻ trẻ không? Toàn đột quỵ không? Ông 90 à? 80 à? À, 42 tuổi rồi. Chứ còn làm ca sĩ không ta? Thấy mà, phải khoe chân, khoe giò ra chứ.
Great. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you this morning.
Yeah. So everyone who's going to be watching this, I'm the Director of Client Relations at Beal Properties. And one thing that we like to do is help our clients hit the ground running so that their investment property that they've hired us to manage runs smoothly. And a key part of that is insurance. We're going to talk about some of those issues today. And Calvin is the founder and leader of Falcon Insurance Agency. We've been working with him for quite a while. He handles insurance for some of our businesses and our properties that we own. And we've been recommending him to our clients, and 100% of them are extremely happy with your service, Calvin. So thank you. So I guess we'll start out today by just, asking how long have you been in the business, and, what was the motivation to start Falcon? And then I've got some kind of technical questions to ask you.
Perfect. So I began in the industry in 2016. I've worked in various capacities, from your typical agent to agency sales manager. And up to this point, I had, prospected at various agencies across Southeast Michigan and decided the time was right to form my own agency, carve out my own markets, get licensing in additional states that I didn't have access to before, and really take that next leap into, scaling into where I want to be.
Nice. Well, we're glad you did, and we've been working with you, Calvin, since before Falcon. So yeah, we go back. So one of the reasons we wanted to do this is because buying an investment property, we work with a lot of new investors who are buying their first one, and it's always this question of finding the right deal. They could literally buy a house in Detroit for $5,000 and then spend $60,000 getting it even approaching being ready to rent and make money, or they could buy a rental in Warren for $160,000 and overpay, but it looks beautiful. We like to try and find that sweet spot, kind of what I call sort of crappy. It needs a little bit of work, but it's not that far off, and it's in an in-demand area. But frequently, with those kind of crappy investment properties, there are going to be things that happen, and insurance is just a key part of that. So I guess my first question for you is, what are some common insurance risk questions that you get asked most often by people, say, that we refer to you?
I would say the most common question I hear is, do I need an LLC? And the short, simple answer is that when starting off, probably not, but it is a good idea. The more layers you can put between yourself personally and the loss, the better you will be should that rainy day ever occur. So
yeah,
I would encourage investors to set up an LLC, if even on their first investment property. It's a good idea. You can probably get away with it for maybe the first couple of years operating without one, but it's just not advisable, and it costs maybe $100 to get it registered. So it's in your best interest to make that jump and make it happen.
Yeah, there's a little legwork involved, but so of the almost 3,000 properties we manage, we own or co-own about 40% of those. And on every one of those, we have a separate LLC and a separate bank account. So that's what I tell clients asking me. And I will say to them, go ahead and get the purchase under your belt, get it set up so that there's money coming in. And then, the next thing is create that LLC. And it's not that difficult to transfer in your experience.
My understanding is that they can quick deed it over, and as long as the lender doesn't have any objection to it, it generally creates no issue. It's a pretty painless process
Yeah.
for everyone.
Yeah, good. So yeah, we're on the same page with that. Another question, what does an umbrella mean?
So I do commonly get asked about the umbrella coverage from especially newer investors, or maybe even seasoned investors who haven't had a chance to talk about it with their agent. The umbrella policy extends liability coverage above and beyond the underlying policy. So if, let's say, you have $500,000 liability coverage on your primary home, and then your 4 rental properties, and then your auto policy, you also have $500,000 coverage, but you purchase a $2 million umbrella policy. That means that should that rainy day ever come, you are insured for up to $2.5 million, the combined limit of the 2 policies. So it's a very inexpensive way to secure and hedge against future liability risk. And the cost of a personal umbrella policy realistically won't cost you any more than maybe 2 hours of an attorney's time. So that's the way I typically look at it, is you're taking a bet on possibly meeting an attorney in the future.
Yeah. I think a lot of people that we work with, even though many of our clients are engineers, doctors, airline pilots, they're smart people, but a lot of people's experience with insurance is like health insurance, where they pay a ton of money and they get nothing back,
Right.
or a bad auto policy they bought. But what we're talking about with, insuring an investment property is a really different situation, and it's not that, as you're saying, like some of these things, that sound exotic, like really aren't that expensive, and once they're understood, make a lot of sense, right?
Absolutely. And I can say truthfully that the largest single loss event I've ever personally had for a claim was on that personal umbrella policy. It was a $3.4 million auto accident. The insured had a child driver that just turned 18. And I said, look, you own a business. I know you have assets. You have that child driver in the household, and that scares me. So I heavily suggested we could do a $5 million personal umbrella. And not a year later, there was a $3.4 million claim paid.
Well, so you did your job and helped someone out, probably saved someone's, not their actual life, you know, certainly their financial life they probably been working for a long time.
Would have been a much uglier scenario without that.
Yeah. All right. And tell us all, what is a master policy?
So the master policy refers to having a single or a few policy solution to a portfolio. So instead of writing a single location policy for 123 Main Street, 456 Main Street, etc., we are able to schedule multiple locations, generally on a commercial policy, onto a single policy form. The big advantage is that you are negotiating one renewal instead of, on a portfolio, potentially 50. And the large advantage is also that you are simplifying your accounting and billing by keeping everything on one policy form in one place. So it may not produce the most cost-effective results. You can generally break things up and find more cost-effective placement. However, this will provide significant reduction in man hours spent thinking about insurance. So if that's something that's important to you, that is something that we do offer, and I'd love to talk further about it.
Yeah, something we have so many clients come to us and they say, I'm buying my first property, but within 5 years, I want to have 50, you know? So this is something that people should start thinking about. And something that I talk about a lot with clients is the, pound wise, penny foolish kind of thing. Penny wise, pound foolish, which way does that go? You know, they spend so much time, trying to save a penny. And I'm like, you just spent 8 hours and you saved $50. We could have done that work, to make that transition from owning one thing to owning 50 things. That's a mentality that we see, work for people a lot. So
exactly. And it's just a very convenient way to know that your portfolio is in good standing. You don't have to check individual billing accounts on single location policies. So if you're purchasing, especially maybe 1 to 4 family rentals, I would encourage you to consider a platform that allows for scalability, because it's going to save yourself and your accountant quite a bit of headache in the long run.
Yeah. Okay. So while we're talking, I'm going to start putting up some stuff on the screen just so people can get familiar with your webpage. Here's the question I've been dying to ask you for one of these videos. In our contract, our management contract, which is just 2.5 pages long, very straightforward, one of the last items on it is we require someone hiring us to add us as additionally insured for general liability to their policy. So they need a line in there saying, there's usually a box and it says additionally insured, and it will say Beal Properties LLC. And most of the time, no one even asks about that. They just call their agent and they do it. But occasionally someone's like, well, why am I, they think we're asking us to be added in case the place burns down, that we're going to get compensated. But can you just give a quick, spiel on why we do that and why that's important?
The additional insured endorsement is important, and it is a very common request from property management companies in 2022. And the key idea is that if you, the property owner, are sued by, let's say, the tenant, maybe they're alleging you're negligent resulting in bodily injury, 9 times out of 10, they are also going to bring suit against the property management company. Now, if they are alleging liability due to something that's outside of the property management company's hands, something that could be just an inherent physical characteristic of the structure, let's say, they the property management company is going to be sued as well, which means that the property owner is going to be sued by the property management company if they do not have that insurance agreement in place, because they ultimately have to indemnify the property management company for losses that they have caused them to be responsible for. So if you are managing Paul's property down the street, and let's say Paul maybe doesn't want to, I don't know, put in a new roof because it'll cost $25,000, which is understandable. And then let's say that there's water damage, which causes the drywall to collapse, which ends up harming a tenant. It's a totally plausible scenario, and the tenant brings suit. Now, in that scenario, the property management company would likely also be named as a party on the lawsuit. So they would feel that financial loss. Ergo, they would indemnify themselves and try to make whole by, ultimately putting that back onto the property owner because it's their responsibility.
Right. And we don't want to get in that situation. And That's not only a plausible scenario, that's a real world scenario that's happened. And it's why once a month I do an insurance audit of all of our clients and make sure that their policy is up to date, that it has not lapsed, and that it's all in order. And if there's anything out of order or it's about to lapse, I will send an email because we want to avoid that whole situation. And, it doesn't cost really anything extra, correct?
Correct. All it does is avoid a second insurance claim that we wouldn't otherwise have to make. So it just simplifies the entire process by extending the insurance coverage that you have as the property owner specific to liability. That's the key here, is it's the liability coverage that the property management company has interest in, which means that really it's just simplifying the duty to defend, meaning that instead of two parties having two different legal teams defending essentially two different cases in the same lawsuit where the property owner and the property manager are both named as defending parties, they're able to come together. It would be one party defending in unison, one insurance company at play. It's just a cleaner process for all parties. Everyone gets a better defense for less money. There's less legal fees in total.
Right. Because of course we have our own business insurance, and the property owner who's hired us has their own insurance. But if it comes to a third party suing both of us, our insurance company's lawyers are going to say, like you're saying, well, we need to sue the property owner because they didn't do this. It's not us saying that.
It would come out of your hands. It would be the insurance company indemnifying themselves against the responsible party, unfortunately. So that's where by extending that coverage to the, property management company, what you're really doing is turning two loss incidents into just the one cleaner incident and allowing both parties to be defended in unison.
Yeah, good. All right, that was a perfect explanation. And 95+% of the time it's never an issue, but there is that occasional client who's like, that sounds weird to me. Why would I do that? So there's your answer. So I guess the last thing I wanted to ask. So in the last year, and we manage a lot of properties, so it's not like we're cursed or anything, but in the last year we had one fourplex that we managed explode because a tenant was doing something they shouldn't have been doing, caught fire, massive water damage because of the fire department, putting the fire out. We had a tree fall on a roof. We've had, a couple of pretty epic floods in the state of Michigan, like once in 100+ year floods. A lot of properties that hadn't seen water damage ever, saw it for the first time. And then we've had a couple instances, say someone just buys a vacant property in Detroit, and before we even get over there to start doing anything, the door's kicked in, and the furnace is stolen, their appliances are stolen. So, what do you recommend as an insurance agent for people to best cover themselves for these kind of freak accidents? Is that just a typical policy, or is there any special questions they need to ask you?
I think it's a very good idea to carry replacement costs whenever it is not otherwise imperative to the deal. So often I will, have a quote where it'll be replacement cost coverage, which really just provides for a lesser out-of-pocket expenditure on especially those middle-sized losses. So if you're maybe newer or maybe still growing real estate investor, I think it's crucial to carry replacement cost coverage. Maybe once you get up to 50, 75 doors, at that point, maybe you're okay with taking a greater propensity for loss. And, if you have that $30,000 rainy day, sure, it's not good, but life will go on. However, if, maybe you're on your second or your third door and you have that $30,000, $40,000 oopsie, that's a much uglier scenario. It's harder to stomach that loss out of pocket. So I think it's crucial to carry replacement cost coverage and to also carry special form cause of loss coverage whenever it is available to you. So that would be the covered set of perils that you are insured for, ergo fire, flood, etc. With a special form policy, this is the broadest cause of loss set coverage form available. And you are covered for everything that is not specifically excluded, i.e. flood, a nuclear bomb going off in the backyard. But if you have a fluke accident, an airplane falls out of the sky and crashes into your building, you would find coverage. So it's a good policy form. I would suggest to carry the broadest coverage that makes sense at a reasonable price, not necessarily just the most inexpensive insurance that you can purchase. There comes a time where at scale you can definitely consider, maybe self-insuring or just reducing overall insurance coverages to try to self-insure as much of those things as possible. But when starting out, I think it's a good idea to not cut things too low and to carry a good baseline amount of insurance coverage. Anything else can work against you in the long run.
Yeah, like most things in life, the cheapest is usually not the best. Just like the example of, should I buy this $60,000 house that needs a little work, or should I get this $5,000 house and hope for the best?
It's those hidden costs that are very hard to predict on the cheap option that make them unattractive, because it's better to spend a measurable amount more that's slightly greater than it is to go for the cheap option on essentially a hope and prayer.
Yeah. And one thing Stuart says all the time, things happen in property management. Like in this business, we're all taking risks as far as trying to find that property that's going to be able to bring in the right cash flow, without spending too much. But stuff happens. Those kind of buildings are typically older. They're typically, there's maybe a good deal because there's been deferred maintenance. It's maybe a good deal because, it's coming, some of the infrastructure at it is coming to its natural end of its life cycle. That's why the person's selling it. So I guess the last question would be, is there any special language or special questions someone needs to ask you to make sure, let's say in the event of a flood where we need to get in and do restoration work and it's uninhabitable for 2 or 3 weeks, how does the owner make sure they get covered for lost rent in that situation?
For the loss of rental income, I include that on every rental policy that I write. Now, I do suggest double checking the limits that are on my quote. I usually talk through it with you while we're on the phone, so that comes up in conversation. But, I do suggest just to double check all of the limits, make sure that you feel that that's acceptable for what you're hoping to accomplish with insurance. But I include a baseline, if not, slightly excessive amount of coverage for loss of rental income relative to what I think the property might generate.
Right. Okay, good. Well, as everyone can see, Calvin knows insurance. We could sit here and talk for hours, and he has very detailed answers to all these questions and really knows everything about it, which is why we like working with you, Calvin. Here's your webpage. Shout out your webpage address for people in case they want to learn more.
FalconINSagency.com.
All right, and then yeah, shout out your email address.
That would be Calvin, CALV Victor I and Nancy at FalconINSagency.com.
And one thing we love about working with you is 100% of the time when I've referred someone to you, like within minutes of them contacting you, you have followed up with them. And that's so important because people buying, maybe their first or second investment property, it's overwhelming. There's a million things, stare them in the face. And, it's just to get one less thing off their mind and handled helps it go really smooth. So
Absolutely.
yeah, well, this has been great. I appreciate you doing this with us, and we appreciate you being a part of our team. Really, that's why I put that other slide up there. We have a core group of other companies we work with that are 100% reliable and have always helped get that new client off to the races. And so insurance is a super important part of that. So thanks again for joining us, and maybe we can do a follow-up because there's actually a lot of other questions I wanted to ask, but we like to keep these videos kind of short. So
Yeah, I'd love to do another in the future. Thank you again for having me.
all right, so everyone, if you're interested in learning more about insurance, give Calvin a call or shoot him an email and get the conversation started. And we will be talking to you soon. You have a great day.
Likewise. Thank you, sir.
All right,
Have a
bye.
good weekend. Bye.